So kind of as our final topic, and we kind of already segued into this, I'd like to know what you guys think about issues of parenting, mentorship, protectorship, that sort of thing. It could be for young people, but it could also be for Gotham as a city, sort of a personified city or something. The reason that I got thinking about this and wanted to talk about it was watching Under the Red Hood, because that's kind of about Jason, second Robin, and how, Joker beats him up and blows him up, but he comes back as the Red Hood, and it's kind of you could kind of see in that movie Batman and Joker as kind of two twisted parental figures, that they both do things that cause Jason to become the Red Hood and cause him to sort of have that fall from grace. And Al Ghul, is it Ra's or Raz? Raz. And Ra's al Ghul is kind of a grandfather figure that kind of, raised them in this twisted way. You could later on see that again with Damian Wayne, because obviously he's kind of a grandfather figure for him too. So I just thought I'd see what you guys thought about that issue.
Yeah, I think family and like parenthood is very central to a lot of Batman stories. First of all, because a big part of Bruce Wayne's identity is dealing with the loss of his own parents, and then also now he's raising every one of the Robins has been his adopted or biological kids, and so there's definitely and I'm sure Bruce probably struggles a lot with wanting to be the father that he never had, but also not being able to because of his rather unorthodox lifestyle. He's bringing these 12, 13-year-old kids into life or death situations, and in many cases, in two separate cases, getting them killed. When Jason Todd died, spoiler alert, I guess.
We'll post spoiler alerts before all these.
Okay. When Jason Todd died at the hands of the Joker, it destroyed Bruce, because Bruce saw it very much as, I led him to this. Right. He was,
and Joker wanted that
exactly. And that stuck with Bruce, even into when Tim Drake was getting ready to become Robin. He comes to Batman. He's like, "Make me your Robin," and Batman's like, "No, I don't. I can't have another Robin." And then Dick Grayson is sitting there. He's like, he needs this kid. He needs someone to help him get past Jason. And we see in all of Bruce's interactions with Tim Drake, he is a lot harder on Tim Drake than he is the other Robins. He put him through a grueling training process that the previous two didn't have to go through, making sure. And then you can see he always tries to keep a certain amount of distance from Tim Drake, or emotional detachment, almost as if he's like, I don't want to go through the pain of losing Jason again. And so, and obviously that really sucks for Tim, because literally his adopted father is treating him putting him at this distance and everything. So and I feel like that relationship and that dynamic is really really interesting. And then when you get to Damian Wayne, I love a lot of people don't like Damian Wayne. They feel he's a little too edgy, but we're talking about the Batman mythos,
right?
So but I really like that dynamic of Bruce trying to deprogram his child who was raised by assassins and be like, hey, here's a better life. You still beat people up every night, but then Damian Wayne grows into the most violent Robin. There's even a storyline. I'm not sure if it's in the main continuity or in an alternate universe, but when Damian Wayne is older, he takes on the mantle of Batman for a little bit, and his gloves, to show the kind of approach he takes to crime fighting, his gloves have bladed spikes on the knuckles. So when he punches criminals, he's also stabbing them. And so Damian Wayne, because of his his upbringing in the League of Assassins or League of Shadows, or in the comics it's called League of Assassins, League of Shadows in the movies. But his upbringing with Talia and Raj, the Al Ghuls, made him a much more violent person. That I feel like while Bruce is trying to deprogram him from that, he's still bringing him into a lifestyle where he is fighting with people and like still enacting physical violence. So it's like, how much deprogramming can he actually do?
Right. And at one point in maybe Hush or in one of the Batman movies, it's like Damian Wayne, and it's interesting because in that movie he gets advice from Dick Grayson, who's now Nightwing, and Damian, and Nightwing is like, this is, if you're going to do this, you're going to have to reveal yourself to her. And Damian's like, you can use her for carnal pleasure, but don't ever reveal yourself. You have to be more paranoid than this. And it's like his son is saying that to Batman, so that kind of, tells you where he's coming from. As far as orphans, that's a repeated theme. And it's interesting because the parallels with the League of Shadows, they believe that they have the right to enforce morality because they're rich, but they use orphans to do a lot of their work, right? Yeah. And if they're perceived as disloyal, they kick them back to the street. That's the only way to get ahead in terms of socioeconomic class, is to be, completely loyal, which we kind of see that in the administration of the current president. Yeah, go ahead.
The whole parenthood thing for Damian actually shifts more to Dick than it stays with Bruce.
That's true.
Meanwhile, in an interesting parallel, despite Bruce keeping Tim at arm's length, Tim is the only one who believes, to the point of his brothers thinking he's delusional, that Bruce is not dead. At one point where they all assume he's been killed, except for Tim was like, no, he's not dead. I will find him. He's somewhere.
So something else I was interested in is the methods of education that Batman uses. And it seems to me like these methods are geared around like punishment or being really harsh and really distant. And I think just from my educational background, people, they learn and they grow better when we accept them and when we expect them to do well. And when we show them we expect you to do well. So this is not necessarily a helpful strategy, but it's the strategy of a vigilante. It's the strategy of someone who's kind of in a desperate position, who has this life and death lifestyle. So I wondered if anybody had thoughts about that.
You mean like training your kid to be a soldier or something?
Right. So in one of the movies, Stephanie Brown, I don't know if she's gotten her. This was like, I guess it'd be in Dark Knight Rises or Returns. And he's holding her. I don't know if she's been hurt or whatever, but he's holding her like this close, and he says, and she's just done something difficult, and he says, "Good soldier." He doesn't say, "Good girl" or "I love you." He says, "Good soldier."
That's an interesting point to bring up, because instead of having like a good son or something on Jason's memorial thing in the Batcave, he has a good soldier. And one of the things that Dick does in the comics before taking Damian with him and moving out of the manor, whenever Bruce is gone for that period of time, dead, is he destroys that specific memorial because that was his brother. And then he leaves, takes Damian with him to live in an apartment.
Interesting.
I was thinking of how there's generational trauma that passes down. There's been studies done of what happened to Holocaust survivors and what was their family dynamic like once they were liberated from the camps, or the ones that had lost like their whole families, and what did that do to them psychologically. And they found that their parenting style was much more, oftentimes it was like kind of cold. You would seem like they would be welcoming. I mean, they love their children, but because of that trauma they had been through, and their children often felt like they couldn't laugh or they couldn't complain because of what their parents had been through. And then the same thing when they found Native American children who had been taken from their families, put into boarding schools. The boarding schools, and where they suffered all sorts of abuse. When they became parents, they had that where they'd been so disconnected from their culture, they had a problem connecting again. A lot of them, they'd had their language beaten out of them. They couldn't speak their native languages. And so they had a trouble connecting with their children. A lot of them became alcoholics and different things. And when you're talking about Bruce, it's like, well, it makes sense. I mean, in a way, you'd think he would want a family, but it's like
he's
that
passing on his
fear
trauma
of losing them would keep them distant. And I've seen that with people who had like that distant relationship with their parents, or something happened that there was this break, it passed down to a certain extent, and then for generations later it's hard to break out of that. It takes a lot of work. And so what you're saying about how he keeps him at a distance like that so fiercely because he's afraid of losing him, it's like, well, yeah, that is true in real life. It happens with generational trauma.
And it makes me think of like, yeah, he has this trauma of his parents being lost, and he kind of passes that trauma on to the different Robins. But there's even like another generation in the Dark Knight Returns. I always mess that up. In the Dark Knight Returns movies, we have the Sons of Batman coming up in the second movie, and there's this scene where like one of them, somebody is trying to, like, Batman is saying, like, you know, everything's gone to chaos in the world, so we are the law, I am the law. And it's a very authoritarian thing going on. And somebody in the crowd says, this is how the Gestapo began. And somebody turns around and strikes him and says, shut up. And it's like, this is like, how many generations, if we spread this to enough people, does that, even if you feel like it's justified vigilantism, when does it become authoritarianism? When does it become another Gestapo?
Right.
Yeah. Second Christopher Nolan did border on that when he was trying to find the Joker.
Yeah, with the whole surveillance.
You're right.
Very much was, he could have gone more authoritarian and been the boogeyman that the criminals all fear. And he was definitely considering, maybe we don't turn it off and I have it. But then he's like, you know what, no.
And I think the quote, it's originally from The Dark Knight Returns, and they utilized it in Batman v Superman also, that I think perfectly sums up Batman's philosophy. Is when he's fighting with Superman, he says, you know, your parents taught you all these lessons about goodness and morality. I can't remember exactly what he said to Superman, but then he's like, my parents taught me a different lesson as they lay bleeding out in an alley for no reason at all. The world only makes sense when you force it to.
Wow.
That just perfectly encapsulates exactly the thought process that Bruce has come to because of his parents' death.
Probably didn't help Ra's al Ghul teaching him things too.
Right.
Kind of reinforced, yes.
I keep getting confused because I keep forgetting because it's in the Nolan movies. Ra's al Ghul teaches trains Bruce. That never happens in the comics, which I'm much more familiar with. And I keep getting, it's like, Ra's al Ghul training him where? But
I know where to bet. I don't know.
Well, and you know, there are parallels, I think, with this notion of the Lazarus pit, because Batman keeps dying and disappearing and coming back again and again. So so that's kind of that legacy.
I wonder how much dying and being resurrected adds to Bruce's mental issues.
It would totally mess you up.
I'm sure.
And you know, it would
first when he'd have to take a break for a month or a year.
It would increase his sense of entitlement, because now not only do I transcend all these poor people, but I transcend life itself.
Right, there you go.
Or death itself.
Death.
I'm eternal.
That's exactly Ross's thing when he uses the Lazarus pit.
Different
That's
conversation. That's Phoenix.
Lazarus pits on himself. He's like, I have transcended life.
Exactly, yeah. He has that sense of arrogance, and that's one of the reasons he's a good grandfather figure for Batman. Or for Robins, and father figure for Batman.
No. It makes me wonder, like, how Dick went about after he was promoted to parent from just being the eldest brother of being promoted to parent of Damien and being like, okay, I have a murder child now who has so far adopted a turkey, a cow, a cat, and a dog.
Very nipply.
So many nipples in this conversation.
Oh. So are we good? Are we nippled out for the
Are we
evening?
gonna nip
Yeah,
that
nippled
one?
out.
Oh yeah, that's a good one. That's a good one. I bet you were